So today we will build a setup very much inspired by the Behringer Neutron that I have here, right? But this version will be slightly different and it will be in stereo and polyphonic. This is how the end result will look like. This is the interface I built with the patch master from MindMeld with the patch bay even. I will show you everything at the end of the video, but let's really start building the engine behind this. So we will start with the oscillators. On the Neutron we have two oscillators and we can morph between their wave shapes, right? So in VCV rack I chose to use two modern VCOs from Surge, right? We can combine different waveforms and create something new waveform. Later on I will show you how this will work with the interface. Like on the Neutron, we can add also pulse width modulation for each of the oscillators. Right here also we have pulse width control. And we can add also this sync sound, right? On the Surge modules, it will work a bit differently, but still you can add this to change the timbre. Now, in the case of the modern VCO, we can also add unison, right, to play basically multiple oscillators at once, detune them and create a bigger sound. And again, this will be in stereo. And I already have some oscillator drift set in the right-click menu, so this will give it this so-called analog sound. Now, all of this on the Neutron is being mixed, so the two oscillators are being mixed into the filter. So in VCV, I will use the Surge mixer, right? Also, this one is stereo, so I have channel 1 and channel 2. And actually, on the Neutron with this control here, this will crossfade between oscillator 1 and oscillator 2, and basically will crossfade and will mix them. Right, this I will add later on also with the patchmaster interface. And again, this is going to the filter, so I will use also the Surge filter. Now, actually on the Neutron, we have three types of filters. We have low pass, right? We have band pass, and we have also high pass. Right, so what I will do, I will actually use three filters, 1, 2, and 3. Right, I will set each of them to the right mode. So this will be low pass 12 dB, just like on the Neutron. This will be band pass 12 dB, and this will be high pass 12 dB. Of course, you can experiment with other filter types as well, but for selecting between them, I will use the root master modules also from MindMeld. Right, so for the input, I will go with the 1, 2, 5. Right, so from the mixer, this will go to the root module, and then we have one low pass, one band pass, one high pass, and then for the output I will use the 5 to 1, right? And then again we have channel 1 low pass, channel 2 will be band pass, and then we have again high pass. Right, so now we can switch between them, and later on I will show you also a nice trick to turn them on and off and save CPU as well. Right, so we have the filters, they have also cutoff control, of course, and resonance control. And now on the Neutron, there is also an envelope that is dedicated for the filters by default. Right, so in this case, I will use the VCV ADSR. Now on the Neutron, there is also a way to control the envelope depth. Right, there is this control here, this knob here. Right, so in VCV, I will need to add an attenuator because of how the Surge module work with modulation. Right, so I will use just the VCA from VCV. Right, the envelope will go to the VCA, and from there to the three filters. The modulation will be all the way open. Right, because now I can control the modulation depth with the VCA. Now let's already add the output VCA and envelope. So for this I will use punch from Volt. This can add also nice drive to the sound, and it's stereo. So this will come from the switch. And just for now, let's already listen to this. Right, so this will go to the output. Now I can mix in, for example, oscillator 1, right, and oscillator 2. Right, I can add unison, I can take this an octave down, Right, again, just like on the Neutron, here we have the noise control, so I can add also noise to the mix, and this in VCV rack I can do from the mixer itself. Right, just like this. So now let's add also the envelope for the VCA, right? This I can open again. Right, so this will be the envelope for the VCA, but on the Neutron, we have also this one here, this knob here, the VCA bias. Right, this will add offset to the VCA, so we can also open the VCA and just let it drone. Right, so this I will add to the envelope with the CV mix control. Right, the envelope will go to the CV mix. I will open it all the way. Right, so now I can control the VCA with the envelope, but I can also add offset. Right, and let this setup just drone. Okay, so now I will use the distortion module from Surge, right, to add the overdrive. Here we have the overdrive section, right, and this will come before the VCA, before the output VCA. Again, we have a stereo signal path. Right, I will go with the OJD model. Right, and just for now, just so we can listen to things, I will use my MIDI keyboard just to play this. Right, I am using the key step. So the pitch will go to both oscillators, right, and the gate will go to both envelopes, right, one for the filters, one for the VCA. Right, and now I can play this again. I can add this one switched here. Let's put this here. I can add an envelope for the filter. Right, I can switch between the filters. So this is low pass. I can use also a band pass. Right, or high pass. And again, later on, this will all be controllable from the interface. Right, and we can add also some distortion. Oh yeah. Right, and also here, just like on the Neutron, I can control the color. This is a nice sound. So again, I will show you all of the controls with the Patchmaster later on, but before we move on to the delay, let's add the LFO. So the Neutron has an interesting LFO. Again, also here we can morph between different shapes. Right, so I will go with the VCV LFO, the wavetable LFO. Also here we can morph between different shapes. Right, and by default it will go to the filter with a dedicated attenuator. Right, so if I show you this on the Neutron, we have here the mode depth. This will come by default from the LFO, right? So we have also an attenuator, so we can control the amount of modulation. So again, I will do this with the VCA in VCV, right? This will go to the LFO will go to the VCA, and then from there to the three filters. And again, I will open the modulation all the way, because then we can control the depth with this VCA, right? So now I can control the modulation depth, I can control the amount, the rate, sorry. And this LFO also goes by default to the pulse width modulation on the Neutron. I believe this is attenuator too. If I open this, this will be the attenuator for the modulation for the pulse width. Right, so in this case, we need two VCAs because we have two oscillators, right? I'm using again the LFO. One VCA will go to one oscillator to oscillator 1 and another to oscillator 2, again for the pulse width modulation. And now I can control the modulation depth, right? In this case, for each of the oscillators, this is a bit different than the Neutron, but it gives us a bit more control. And now let's add a few things for the pitch control. So first of all, we can add glide or portamento to the pitch. So this I will do with the VCV process module, right? It will look like this. The pitch will come from the MIDI module in this case, right? And I'm using the glide output. It will glide between notes only when the gate stays high, so only with overlapping notes. And for this, I have to use the gate, right? So if I do something like this, we get no glide, but if I hold the notes, let's remove the modulation here. Now we also have key tracking for the filter. So once again, I will need some sort of control to turn it on and off, right? Just like on the Neutron here, we can have key tracking, right? So I will use another VCA, and then again, later on, I will set everything up with the, this will have to be green for modulation, set everything up with the interface. And again, this will go to the three oscillators, three filters, just like this. And I open the modulation all the way, right? So now we can have key tracking. So higher notes will be brighter, or I can turn this off. Let's turn off also the envelope. Right, you can see the movement here on the filter with key tracking and without. Also the LFO has key sync or key tracking as well, right, with this button here. Right, so in this case, I can just connect this to the FM input, right? And then if I want to edit, I just open the attenuator or not. Okay, now let's add the delay. This will come at the end of the chain. Again, I will use the delay from Surge. It's a stereo delay in this case. So again, we have stereo. Later on, you will see it's also polyphonic. Right now, this delay from Surge doesn't have so much character like the one on the Neutron. We have here a delay. It's full of character. It's a bucket brigade delay, if I remember correctly. And again, it's full of character. It's very crunchy and noisy. But on the Surge delay, I will just take the high frequencies a bit down just to make it a bit darker, just like or similar to the Neutron. Right, let's play this a bit. Right, and again, it's stereo with feedback. This is a nice sound indeed. Okay, now let's add the sample and hold. Right, we have here on the Neutron also a sample and hold with rate and glide. Right, so for this I will use the random module from VCV. We have a built-in rate control and also a glide or slew. And this is more or less it, right? We have two oscillators, filters, envelopes, two envelopes, overdrive, delay, sample and hold, LFO, just like on the Neutron, two oscillators, right? Cross-fading, different shapes, three filters or filter types, modulation with an LFO, modulation with an envelope, noise, VCA bias, LFO, overdrive, delay, sample and hold, slew limiting, right? 2 envelopes, one for the filter, one for the VCA. So now let me show you the interface and how everything is working. Okay, so this is how the final patch will look like. This is what we've built. I just added a few modules I will show you in a second. And this is the interface and patch bay. Now you can move the modules or the engine, let's call it, anywhere you like in the patch, right? So you don't even have to look at it. You can even hide the cables and just concentrate on the interface and patch bay if you want. But please do not move the individual modules. Keep the gaps, as they say, mind the gaps. Keep the gaps between the modules because of how I'm using here the strip modules from Sturmholder. I will show you this in a second. This can cause issues. So if you move things, don't move the individual modules, just grab everything and move it all together. Right, so this is first of all. Now for this demonstration, let's start with the patch bay. I'm going to use my key step again, just so I can play things and show you how everything is working. So the patch bay is very similar to the Neutron. On the left, we have inputs. On the right, we have outputs. And here, for example, we have the oscillator 1, oscillator 2, and 1 and 2 pitch inputs. Right, so if I want to use pitch for both oscillators, I will take the volt per octave and I will connect it to the input of 1 and 2. And now this will go to both oscillators. And now we need also to gate the envelopes, right? We have here envelope gate 1, envelope gate 2. You can also even refer to the manual of the Neutron, by the way. This will work more or less the same. So envelope 2 is normal to envelope 1. So if you gate envelope 1, it will also gate envelope 2. You can see this connection here. If you want to use a different gate from a sequencer or from or 2 different MIDI keyboards or whatever you want to do, you can connect the gate to the input and then you have to switch the light. You see by default it's set to synth. All the default connections are set to synth. And if you want to break this connection, you have to send something to the input and switch the light as well. Right, but in this case, I'm just going to send the gate directly to the envelope 1. And now this will gate both envelopes. Right, so now let's see if we get sound. Indeed, I have here level control. Right, so now we have the oscillator. And the oscillator, the synthesizer is playing. You can change the filter. Right, let me just take this maybe, and it's already down. All right, let's see. Okay, so here we have the VCO section or the oscillators section. We have oscillator 1, we have oscillator 2. We have tuning for both of them. We have also octave ranges, right? And already I will show you also the mix. So this will crossfade between them. And how I did this, if you have a look here on the mixer, you will see that when I take this to the left, oscillator 1 will go up, oscillator 2 will go down, and the opposite will happen. Right, so if, for example, we concentrate on oscillator 1, for example, I can take the range down, change the shape, bring in oscillator 2, right, I can add unison to oscillator 2, and then detune the oscillators. Let's take the level a bit down. Right, we can add a shape modulation if you choose to from the patch bay. Again, we have this sync sound. We can add noise. Again, the VCA bias. Right, so we have all of the controls that we need. Right, which is quite cool. Now we have the filters. So as I mentioned before, I wanted to show you a way that we can also save CPU. So as you see here, I have the 3 filters. I have the low pass, the band pass, and the high pass. You can see that the band pass and the high pass are bypassed. They are bypassed and they will save CPU. So I'm using the strip module from Stürmelder, just like I mentioned before. Again, I will mention it, keep the gaps, don't move the individual modules because it will bypass everything in the chain, right? So this strip module will bypass everything until the gap. This strip module will bypass everything until the gap. And the same with this one, right? So when I switch filters, if now I switch, for example, to the band pass, have a look what happens. The band pass will be activated and the low pass will be deactivated, right? And I have the buttons here. Right, so now we have band pass with resonance. If I go back to the low pass or the high pass, right, so like this you can switch between the filters and save CPU. And again, we have switches here, buttons. You can use only one, so you cannot unbypass 2 filters. Right, so you have the low pass, the band pass, and the high pass. Again, with resonance, again, you can activate and deactivate key tracking. In this case, it's a button, and this will, as you can see, will open this VCA here that will activate and deactivate the key tracking. Let's leave it on for now. Right, in this case, I also added the drive control, and this is also quite interesting because I have the drive control controlling 2 parameters with another macro controller here. So when I up the drive, the gain will go down just to make sure nothing gets too loud, right? So I hope you can see this if I'm zoomed out. Have a look, I'm going to move the drive control and have a look. Those 2 controls will move in opposite directions, and maybe you can see this here also on the filter. Right, so I up the drive and the gain will go down, right, just to make sure nothing gets too loud. Right, so this was the filter section. Now we have also the LFO, right? Again, we can morph between the shapes. We can change the rate and activate and deactivate key syncing. So let's add some modulation, for example, for the filter with the mod depth. Right? And again, we have the envelopes. So I will move already to the envelopes. We have envelope 1 for the VCA, envelope 2 by default for the filter. I will show you soon there are also outputs on the patch bay that you can route them wherever you want. Right, so if, for example, I will change something here is a bit clipping. Right, this is the envelope for the VCA. Now I can add also envelope modulation for the filter. And again, we have the delay as well. So again, it's stereo delay. So we have time left and time right. And we have feedback. Let's add some pulse width modulation here again with the LFO. And again, This is all polyphonic as well. So if you feed this polyphonic pitch and gates, this will work also polyphonically. So if I change this, for example, to 5 voices, now everything will be polyphonic. Let me just make sure it's not too loud. Right? Right, this can also work polyphonically, which is quite cool. Again, we have drive. Yes, this is a very interesting sound. And again, we have portamento or glide, which will only happen together with the gate. Right, and we have also the sample and hold. And again, this is the interface. This is the patch bay. We have shape inputs, pulse width inputs, frequency for the filter, delay time. Again, the envelopes, you can choose a different sample and hold clock. And again, if you want to break the connection, you have to switch the lights here. LFO inputs. Then we have outputs. The audio outputs are stereo. And of course, if you are using polyphony, they will be also polyphonic. So we have oscillator 1, oscillator 2, and oscillator mix. You can see you can just take the outputs and switch the lights. You can take the output from the filter. You have the envelope outputs, the LFO, and the sample and hold, so you can route it anywhere. So this is basically the interface. Again, you can just zoom in on the interface and concentrate on sound design. Of course, feel free to experiment with different filters, different filter modes, different oscillators, even if you want. But this was it. Thank you again for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. Cheers.